Welcome to Robo Success, the podcast that loves robots, marketing, and success. Here we spotlight the innovators building the future of robotics. Hit subscribe, share with a friend, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Robo Success Podcast. Today I have my partner here, Andy Diepen. And well, today we are going to be talking about our story about Robo Success. So I will let Andy introduce himself so people get to know him a little more and what he's doing at Robo Success.
Hi, I'm Andy Diepen. So I am the Chief Operations Officer at Robo Success, and I handle more of the technical background. I have a technical background and help our companies succeed from my past experience, and that's who I am.
Thank you, Andy. So I think today, we get a lot of questions like why Robo Success, how Robo Success was born, and all that. And I think it's a good time to start telling a little bit about our story. And maybe we can start diving into our journey, right? Like how we start in the robotics industry. Maybe you can start telling us a little bit about yourself. Then I can share a little about my story, and we can get from there.
This will be good because I want to hear your story too, Jessica. But I think my story is pretty simple. I've always loved electronics and technology, and like even from a young age, I remember, I had a workroom in my parents' basement where I would, take apart all of my toys. My parents used to give me things to take apart. I think I electrocuted myself for the first time when I was 12 years old. I remember it vividly. And technology, electronics, robotics has always been a part of my life. Everything from, I've designed systems for aviation, avionics systems. I've designed systems for defense technology. I've helped startups develop technology for automotive industry and everything in between. I've always loved robotics and electronics and complex systems, and it's always been a part of my life. So Robo Success fits in very cleanly into that, and it lets me share the knowledge that I've gained over the years working with engineering teams and lets me keep working in the industry. What about you, Jessica? I want to hear your backstory.
So for me, I think I start mostly when I grew up looking at my dad's factories. He had a shoe factories in Mexico. And I always thought that the use of technology can improve, right, the process of how to make shoes. And it was a very manual work. Of course, I remember a few machines, but I remember having, seeing a lot of people doing a lot of manual work. And it was always for me like, oh, there should be something that can improve the way they are working, also the safety, also the process, how to make it faster. I remember, especially when he had big orders, like everything was like, oh man, we have these big orders, we have to make all these changes. And it was like something needs to be improved. I have to be honest, at that time, I never heard about engineer or computers or robots or anything like that, but it was always on me like something needs to be happening here. Then in high school, I heard for the first time about being an engineer because I have very good grades, and this university came and offered me a scholarship for being an engineer, and I was afraid of being an engineer, to be honest. I was like, I don't know if I'm for that. I'm good at math, but I don't know if that good. I don't know. I have a lot of doubts about myself. So I actually took a year after high school to really find out what I wanted to be. And it's when I discovered industrial engineer, and I started working on this and getting my degree on that. Even though I was like, I don't know, I get a lot of feedback from people like, oh no, you are not going to be happy there. It's for men. It's a career for men. It's not going to be easy finding a job for you. I'm tiny. So people say like, people probably won't respect you. So anyhow, I get there, and then I start working in one of the few robotics companies in Mexico, doing majority in marketing and sales and more on that. But very quickly start growing into that career. And then when I moved to the US, it was kind of natural. I started working mostly in software. But then very quickly jumped back to the robotics industry and started doing a lot of customer success. And this is kind of where I developed the story of Robo Success, because after too many years implementing, selling robots, and so on, I realized that there was this big gap. And then it's when Andy and I start talking about, all the people we met in the industry. And probably you can tell your story about, what are the flaws that you realize it was happening in the robotics industry? What are the gaps that they were missing going into market?
Yeah, and so you highlighted a couple of things, and one of them, Jessica, is why I really enjoy working with you. And I think that your background, your story is a little bit different than mine since I came up through, intense engineering focus. And it does kind of play into why we started Robo Success. One of the things with technology is technology grows and matures. Um, look at your car, right? Your car has over 100 computers in it or 100 pieces of hardware running software. And technology innovation, it keeps getting more complex. And the complexity is higher than it ever has been in the past, but it's also lower than it ever will be in the future. And we see this across many industries where there is a focus on specialization. And to be successful, you need to specialize. You need that specialized focus. And so a lot of the founders that we meet, that we talk to, they're specialists in their technology, in their field, and they need to be to understand the complexity of technology innovation today. And that's really why we started Robo Success, is we work with founders and teams that are specialized in their technology, their field. They're making great products, and we're there to be the specialist, because the other thing that we see in industry is if you're not getting recognized, it's hard to commercialize your technology. It's hard to get out there. If you're not in social media, if you're not in front of people talking, it's really hard to get, whether it's a venture investment or getting a partner to do demonstrations or building up your supplier network, your manufacturing network. That's really hard if you're not out on these platforms and on these communication platforms. So really for me, that is where Robo Success provides the value. Is we work with founders that really deeply understand their technology. They deeply believe in their technology, but they need some help with everything else, right? With the branding, the marketing, and that aspect. And we can really be the specialist for that.
Absolutely. And I have to add that again, after, all these years, I would say more than 15 years probably in the experience in this field, I have seen also the disconnection between the great technology and what the customer wants and needs, and how to, close that gap between being very technical and tell the people this is the value proposition, this is why you need my product, this is how you need to implement it. And then there is the other aspect that at the end, the people that is going to be operating or using the robot every day, sometimes they have a very big gap also in the use of technology. I have seen, or I have implemented robots with people that they are even afraid to use Facebook on their phones, right? I say I only use for call, text, and probably WhatsApp, something that is very easy for them. So you need to also understand that, operators, because if no, you're going to have a very big churn, or people not using your technology and saying this doesn't work because they tell to their bosses, oh, this is not working, or I don't want to use it, it's too complicated for me. So how can you, deliver the message that even that people that haven't been in contact with technology can use it? And I think this comes here from another question that we get a lot, right? Like, what is the biggest mistake that companies, robotics company, do in marketing? And I would love to hear your perspective on this, and then I can tell a little bit about my side.
Yeah. So, you know, I wish that I could say that there is a surefire way to develop a new product and make it be successful. There is no guaranteed ways. Nobody can tell you whether or not your technology is going to be successful before you make it and get it out there. There are, on the other hand, surefire ways to ensure that your technology will fail. And I think you highlighted one of them that I see often, right? As coming from the engineering background, I could talk for hours about really cool engineering projects I've worked on, really smart engineering teams, and a common theme, across my history is engineers have a really hard time deciding when something is done, right? They can always make it better, and they always want to create something that is technologically interesting, that is a better widget. And and you kind of touched on it is, just because you're making something that's cool, that's flashy, it's new, it's a new technology, that doesn't mean that there is a need in the market for it. And a lot of times, the best technologies, the best companies, it's actually not new technology. It's boring old technology that is going towards a new market, right? There's a new opportunity and taking time-proven technologies and putting them into a new market. So that's one of the challenges that I see. And, I've also spent a number of years doing sales for engineering services companies. And engineering services, like doing sales, it's if you can identify something that's going to save your client money, that's valuable. But the most valuable thing is if you can solve a problem that your client has. And so when I was doing sales, it's always find that pain point, get to the pain point. And when we're developing robotic technologies, when we're developing new products, it's really important to understand what that pain point is. What are you solving? Why do your clients want this? To ensure that there's a market there to accept your technology, as opposed to starting from a really cool idea and then trying to find a fit for that really cool idea.
Absolutely. And I will also say that one of the biggest mistakes I see is like you are creating a company that sometimes is more complex than others, right? You need to have hardware, you need to have software. There are a lot of pieces that you need to do, and probably development takes longer than other products. So, and then on top of that, you are raising for money, you are trying to get in pilots and so on, and you don't have to do all alone. And like what you're saying, right, they are specialized in creating a great technology, but honestly you are not the best at creating your brand or your market, right? So the mistake I see is that you're trying to wear a lot of different hats, trying to do everything. And then, of course, what is more important, right? Having a good product or MVP to start doing your pilots, or having a good brand. But at the end, everything it goes aligned. So you need to have, a system and kind of a way to get everything kind of ready, because suddenly you will have like, okay, the money to get started, and then you don't have a good marketing or a good website to start launching, and everything you needed to have it for tomorrow to deliver, and of course you are not going to have it, right? Then when you're building your brand, you are also building the trust of the people, right? So at the same time you're building your product, trying to get in pilots, you are building your brand as well. So it's good I see these mistakes where they are trying to do everything. I know now there are a lot of tools that are helping you out there. But also as a founder, I have made those mistakes where I have been trying to do all by myself. And I think we all sometimes get stuck there. And the reality, if we see, is not that we deliver the value we should, because we are not expert in other areas, right? Sometimes I have been even doing accounting, even though I have an accounting kind of low degree from high school, but still, right, I'm not an expert. So instead of spending hours trying to figure it out, how to do accounting, I'd rather pay that, use my time in the things that I'm expert to. So I think that is also one of the mistakes I see a lot in the funders, which I understand. Again, sometimes it's like, okay, I don't know where to start. But well, this is what I see. And then I think you have a great experience in operations. And I think this also is a very important role that it plays when you are creating a robotics company. So tell me a little bit why you see, how this role plays for the go-to-market strategy.
Yeah, well, actually, I want to tie this into what you said before, right? Is if you look at how companies succeed and look at how companies fail. And a lot of new startups, you know, you can fail from winning just as often as you fail from losing, right? You can see examples out there in industry of companies that have new technology, a new product, and the founder is doing everything because Jessica, I know you know this, right? When you're early on and starting something new, you have some time. You may be developing a product, but you can set time aside to do like your accounting, do your marketing, do your branding. And early on, that's very easy. But if your technology is really good and is going to get traction, it's going to scale and grow very quickly, and you're going to be overwhelmed very quickly. And so, one of the most critical things to do early on with your startup is get good systems in place. Get a team, whether they're on board or not, understand what that team is doing to be able to handle that scaling when it happens.
Yep.
Because if you are going to be successful, that scaling is going to happen. And so obviously, Robo Success is here for a lot of that branding and marketing, and we can help put together some of that strategy as well. And operations is no different. And, looking at different industries, I do a lot of work with like construction equipment. And if you look at the construction equipment industry, how they make money is different than how other companies make money. You may have an OEM that is selling construction equipment that they don't make any money on selling that tractor or that skid steer or whatever it is. They actually make money on the service and the spare parts. And so, that falls a little bit into this operations of putting together a cohesive business plan, right? If you have a product that you're going to put out in the market, it's how is that product being sold? Do you have a distributor network that's selling it? Are you, selling it yourself? Are you doing a Shopify account? And then what happens after you sell that product? Is there wear items that need to be replaced? Do you need field support technicians? I do a lot of work in specialized industries where you may actually need a sales team that is embedded with your clients. There's some industries, you look at like agriculture, construction, a lot of these things where a lot of the actual product sales, if you look at where they're being sold, there's a few large companies, especially rental companies. Rental companies buy a lot of construction equipment. You may need a sales team that's embedded in that. And then how is your support plan working? Are you going to do all of the support yourself? Are you going to have a team behind you? Or are you going to have a dealer network that's handling level one support? So operations is important from understanding the holistic business plan that you're putting together to support your technology, but also understanding what that means to your revenue and your bottom line. And that's important when you start looking for funding and pitching your business to investors, co-founders, and employees.
Yep.
But I want to hear, Jessica, I think that you've actually spent a lot of time in some of these operations roles. Tell me what you think is important there.
I think just exactly what you are saying, right? Having systems in place. You really need to start documenting a lot, right, from the beginning, what it looks like, because then later it's easier to iterate. If you don't have a system how to enter the market, right, it makes very messy and complicated. So from the beginning, when you are creating, you go to market strategy, you can even start thinking about partners. I always have said, especially in the robotics industry, that you need an ecosystem to grow, right? It takes a village to grow. And in this case, you need partners like even, for the OME, again, like you were saying, right? Like, okay, I need these pieces to have together my robot. What if tomorrow I have to deliver five? Right? What is gonna take? Right now I'm building one and I probably know what it takes. But if tomorrow I have an order of five, what it means that? What it means that I need to have somebody to do implementation, the sales, right? All those little details need to have a system so it doesn't get messy. Of course, the first deliveries, the first sales are going to be like that. But if you have a system already in place, it's going to be easier to move the pieces and understand where is the gap or what are the things that you need to move around. And a lot of people doesn't realize this until they start getting, the traction. And it's like, okay, now I commit to deliver 10 robots, but I don't have, a way to do it. I don't have the capability of the manufacturing. I don't have the capability of building. I don't have the capability of the pieces that I need to, right? Then also probably you don't have the team. So if somebody is going to buy you 10 robots, what is going to take? If you start thinking a little about that and you go to market strategy, if you are saying to your investors, oh, I'm planning on doing this number of sales by the second year, what does that really means from the operation side? Because also operation side is impacted in the customer experience. I'm very passionate about this topic, so I'm not going there. If no, we're never gonna finish this episode. But that impacts a lot on the customer experience, and this also impact on the numbers that you are delivered to your investors. Investors wants to make sure that you are delivering the numbers you promise. So make sure your operation system is in place also with your go to market strategy.
And that's hard, right? Because, one thing you can say about plans is you can put together a plan early when you're starting your business and guaranteed that you're not going to stick to that plan. That plan is always going to change. You cannot predict all of it, but going through the exercise of figuring out how you're going to support these things, how you're going to support your product when it's in the field. Like you said, who's building my product, who's assembling it, who's shipping it, who's supporting it, all of that has to go into your business plan and lay out those plans, and it helps highlight areas where there may be a weakness. And that's okay. Even if you don't have a solution, that's okay. It's identifying those weaknesses and identifying those areas that you need to work on, and that becomes your focus going forward. Are there other things you think founders should focus on early in their startup?
Well, last episode, actually, we were just talking about, channels, right? What are the channels, how you're going to be selling your products, right? Are you going to have inside sales? Are you going to have, partners? I would say that also you have to define your market, right? What it makes more sense. And again, I think this came back to the partners and the specialize. Are you good at making the product? Just do the product, right? And try to think how you can partner with someone who can deliver better service or sales, right? Or who has already kind of the customer base. Sometimes it makes sense for you to do the sales because you understand, again, all your operations, you can handle everything, right? You can deliver, especially at the beginning, probably. So I think, again, as a founder, right, and I have the experience that sometimes you really need to understand what things you really can take on and what things you need to ask for help. And this is where I think founders are the smart ones, the ones that know how to ask for help.
You've touched on it a few times, and my number one recommendation to founders and established businesses also is partner, partner, partner. Like there are companies out there that have those specializations that I talked about earlier, and partnering with companies allow you to scale quickly. And partnerships don't have to last forever. If you have a new product, you don't have recurring revenue from sales, partner for that, building your first units and getting them out there. And you can always bring that manufacturing back to be a part of your business plan, but partnering early on saves you that capital expense. Same thing with your marketing and social media, your branding, all of that, right? Robo Success is a great partner. You don't have to choose us and you don't have to work with that kind of partner forever. It's a lot of the companies, a lot of those partnerships are good to get you started, get you off on the right foot. And if you need to stand up your own marketing team or your own manufacturing team in the future, you do that building on the revenue that you generated early on.
Yep, exactly. So I think we are getting at the end of this episode, and well, I think for me it was very important to know that Robo Success is no alone. I have a good partner, I have a good team, and we are doing this together, to help a lot of companies. We have been doing it, for too many years. We are always happy, to share our story, to give our feedback. Andy has been working in this industry for too long as well. And we're always happy here, to hear what you're doing, how we can help you. Sometimes even just talk about your idea is good enough, right? When somebody gives you a little of feedback or what we know about the industry, we're always here to happy to hear and share our experience.
And we always love learning new things. One of the favorite parts of my day is when I get to talk to founders that have new technology, new idea, something new they want to bring to market. Uh, Jessica and I both love those conversations. We love the innovation. We love the people. It's it's fun.
Yes, yes, it is. Well, Andy, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening this podcast or watching it. So see you next time.
Thanks.